Good afternoon, everyone. I am your right geek, Stephanie, and I am here with my brother, Matt. And the purpose of this broadcast will be to talk about Endgame. Yeah, pretty much. Matt is here to make sure the discussion is broader because I'm pretty sure I would just obsess on one thing if I was here by myself. So, Matt.
Not to mention, it's like Endgame. It's not just a discussion about Endgame. It's a discussion about the spectacular accomplishment of the entire universe, and I have comments on a number of things that are more sort of metacritical. So,
right, exactly. So Matt will be kind of the agenda setter, I think, and I'll be the one that responds because. Matt is probably better able to be less emotional.
I don't know. I was pretty excited about the movie, but
yeah. And Matt has also seen it twice too. Like I've only seen it one time. I haven't had the money to see it another time yet. So, so seeing it twice means he might have caught more than I did.
Well, I think we might want to start by letting you take the floor to talk about the thing that you're most excited about talking about. I'm very sure, having spoken to you about it before. That being Marvel's incredible accomplishment in developing a face of a franchise from movie 1 to movie 22 in Tony Stark and everything he's been through and how that's gone.
Yeah. So yeah. Yes, that is the thing that I am most excited about. Yes. I think let me try to formulate my words because again, I'm very, very emotional about this. What I was thinking in my head is it was a good example. That character is a good example of what the Bible would call a treasure in an earthen vessel. And what I mean by that is we have a character that was created with a whole sack full of significant flaws, but he also had that one or two strengths that were able to drive him forward. And I think that well, what I've been writing on my blog so far is that what seems to drive him the most are two things: fear and guilt. And from those two kind of keys to his character, the key that he's not someone who he's not a sociopath, as I said on my blog. Like he when you are initially introduced to him in his early days, you get the feeling that he's, kind of an ass, to put it. You could say it much less politely, but he's, someone who has lived kind of a life of privilege, and he's never really known any adversity. And so he spends all of his time whiling away the hours on fast women and fast cars and drinking and partying and gambling and carrying on, essentially. And, that's our start point. But even in the first movie, you can see that he has that capacity for guilt. He has that capacity to feel responsibility for what he has wrought upon the world. And they take that set point and over 22 movies take him on this incredible journey of basically evolving from the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, as he says flippantly in the Avengers, to the husband and father who sacrifices his life to save the universe. And that is so dramatic. I think that, well, on my blog I said the only other character arcs I can think of that were that dramatic, that have been that dramatic in the history of, I guess, media storytelling, at least in my lifetime, are the changes that you see in Babylon 5 with Londo and Jakar, who each of them go on this incredible journey. In the case of Jakar, from someone who is all about revenge and basically avenging his people and what they went through, all the way up to basically this religious leader who is able to set aside his desire for vengeance and become something greater than that. And Londo is on this other journey where he indulges in his selfishness, causes a lot of disaster and despair, but eventually comes to feel guilty and shameful about it, and he eventually redeems himself in a way. And I think what we see with Tony Stark is another example of a strong redemption arc, where he's kind of a prick at first, but over time he actually becomes genuinely heroic, and it's all driven by that initial thing that they started him off with, which was, yes, he can feel guilty once he's actually faced with the consequences of his actions in the world. He can completely change his perspective and say, oh, wait, maybe my life of dissipation is not the way I want to live my life. Maybe I want to do something more for the world. And there's more that I've said on my blog about how he, in the first Avengers movie, he becomes aware for the first time that there is a universe beyond the planet Earth, and a lot of the things in that universe are very, very dangerous, and Earth is not prepared for them. And so from that shift in perspective, you see him become more fearful and more determined to stave off whatever that coming disaster is, and that drives his actions through Iron Man 3, through Ultron, through Civil War, and in a way that's also a remarkable change, because if you remember in Iron Man 2, he was very flip and didn't want the government to intervene in what he was doing at all, and basically told the Senate to suck it and all that stuff.
He said, I have successfully privatized world peace.
World peace, yes.
Imagine the gumption of somebody who says, I alone, with my one military invention, will create peace in our time.
Yeah. But then he goes through things that humble him significantly, to the point that by the time you get to Civil War, you see him suddenly wanting the government to step in, like because of things that have happened in the meantime. How he realizes that being flip and taking on all the responsibility himself to protect the world and have that peace in his time is actually not the way to go, because when he tries to do it himself, bad things happen, basically. Which is basically the whole story of Ultron. Like, was him realize he's trying to protect the world in the best way he knows how, but the problem is he's kind of not consulted with anyone else. He just kind of, all right, this is what I need to do. I need to put that suit of armor around the world, and it all goes wrong. And he's like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I should have been more humble about this. So he goes on this trajectory of being this flip kind of arrogant guy who basically trusts in himself only, to the much more humble and fearful and kind of grim guy who realizes that, wow, maybe I shouldn't be wielding all this power on my own. Maybe there needs to be some sort of check on my decision making and what I do. And what's interesting is at the same time, you see Steve Rogers going in the opposite direction, basically, where Steve Rogers starts off as a character who's very trusting of institutions, very trusting of the government. He grew up in that World War II era where people generally trusted the institutions of American society and didn't didn't really feel any need to have suspicion for the choices that the government makes. And then by Winter Soldier, you know, he realizes that there are elements in the governments, are elements in the institutions that are not trustworthy, and so he goes on this trajectory of no, I no longer trust the government, at the same time that Tony Stark is going in the opposite direction. And it's very interesting because those two characters are they're going on opposite trajectories, so they never really agree with each other ever, which makes the way that they interact with each other very interesting.
Yeah, I would take that a step further and say, well, I was thinking while you were talking about Tony Stark discovering that yes, he needs other people as, you know, feedback mechanisms and his teammates in order to accomplish what he wants to accomplish without making things worse.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true to an extent. I also think, however, that his greatest strength is also a flaw, that he never gets over the presumption that he's the one who will make the big I'll figure it out, and he's the one who will be the guy who solves the problem.
Yeah.
And it's actually that very issue that well, one of the major things that leads to the initial victory of Thanos is he's still of the presumption that he can solve it by just out thinking and out developing and out muscling,
right,
working as a team.
Yeah, he has kind of the flaw of many smart people, where they think, you know, I'm smart, I can figure this out, you know, like, and a lot of the drama of kind of the middle phase between, you know, 1, 2, and Avengers, but the phase that had Iron Man 3, Ultron, and Civil War was he's asking for government oversight because of his own fear and his own guilt, but at the same time, he's still like scrambling to see, am I the smart guy that can figure this all out and save the world from the cataclysm that I know is coming? And that's the other thing that that is distinctive about that character is he's the one that becomes aware that there's something big coming, something cataclysmic coming, and he's the one that's trying to warn everyone else. You know, something big is coming, and we need to figure this out. We need to do something. And the others seem to be somewhat less aware that that is a possibility, or they don't fear it as much as he does.
I think he didn't have the benefit of actually seeing the entire Tritari armada in space the way he did.
Yeah, true.
Perhaps getting a glimpse of Thanos, he didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But getting a glimpse of that fleet and getting a glimpse of the powers that were coming to bear just to get the Tesseract.
Yeah.
He didn't know it was an Infinity Stone yet, but
yeah, right. He didn't know it was an Infinity Stone yet. He didn't know it was Thanos, but yeah, that's true, because he was the one out there seeing the armada. As I said,
we didn't see the giant sanctuary ship that was in space.
Yeah, exactly. And I said on my blog, you know, because he is gifted with a brain, he put 2 and 2 together and said, "Holy shit, we're screwed," and then panicked for the next several movies. Like,
yeah, I mean, he's gifted with, I would say, the best intellect of the group, although Bruce Banner certainly contends.
Yeah.
And he's also the pragmatist, even more than Bruce Banner. He's also the guy who, as I said, like, his flaw is that he thinks he can solve everything. Yeah. So he's always working on, I don't know, what's the logical engineering approach to solve this problem.
Yeah.
And you know, so he sees a giant armada in space, and his brain goes, "All right, well, that was a giant armada that we only saw like a tenth of actually reach the surface. What happens when more stuff shows up?"
Yeah.
And we barely handled that first one. Like, we only handled it because we happened to have the tool needed to turn off the Tesseract. Because thankfully Eric Selvig built in a little failsafe, even while being mind controlled.
Yeah,
that was
and yeah, we barely beat that one, as you were saying, and Tony probably says in his head, and I almost died doing it. So yeah, at least that early on in his character's evolution, he was not the sort of guy that would be able to face impending death well. Like, so,
yeah, he did it in that movie, but only because like it was the only option,
right?
And because there was that spark of goodness in him that wanted to leave a good legacy. It was just, like buried under all the layers of preservation and engineering mindset and we'll call it.
Yeah. Well, I mean that, like I walked away from seeing Avengers in the theater, and you and I saw that together, I believe.
Yes, we did.
Back in 2012. Yeah, I walked away with that and I said, yeah, that was the point of that movie. Well, one of the points. One of the major points was Stark realizing that realizing first of all that yes, he does need a team. Like because he comes in with that he comes into the movie with that engineering mindset, and I'm the big hot shot, I can solve everything, and by the end he's willing to accept Steve's leadership. He realizes, no, I'm not the leader, Steve is the natural leader, right?
Yep.
So yeah, and that's important to his growth as a character.
What's interesting, actually, is that even after Civil War, even after Steve gets split off from the group, he still turns over control of the Avengers to Black Widow.
Right.
Not himself.
Not himself. Yeah.
Which is, an interesting choice.
Yeah. Well, I think because by then, after all of the desperate and kind of flawed scrambling to try to figure out a solution for himself, he realized that he is a flawed vessel for that sort of leadership, basically.
I think he still at that time thought he would find the solution, but that he should be the one leading the effort to do so. Like he thought, even right up until Infinity War, he was thinking, I think, that I'll think, whatever the bad guy's coming, I'll be instrumental. I'll be the guy. I'm the one who can figure this out. But just because I'm the one who can figure this out doesn't mean I'm the one who can lead the team.
Right. and then
his humbling goes in stages.
yeah, exactly. And then as you were saying, he's walking into that thinking, I can outthink him, I can figure out the solution. And then at the end of Infinity War, that kind of delusion about himself is completely wiped away.
Along with everyone on that planet except Nebula.
Yeah. Yeah.
Including his protege.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the way he starts in that I said in my blog, the way he starts in Endgame is he's completely broken because everything he has tried, everything he has thought of, all of his smarts and intelligence could not defeat him. Well, now my brain thinks now that maybe that's kind of the point of the story, is it wasn't his smarts that was going to defeat him. It was something else about his character that was going to do it. But as you said,
he didn't make time travel, which is impressive. But the key to defeating Thanos wasn't the time travel. That just got us to the point where we could fight Thanos again.
Right.
The key to defeating Thanos was to make use of your entire team under someone else's leadership to keep Thanos occupied while you got a hold of a gauntlet, and to be willing to sacrifice yourself to stop other sacrifices from occurring. And
so
remember in Infinity War, Steve admirably says, we don't trade lives. We will not sacrifice people, willingly to stop this from happening.
Right.
And that is exactly the thing that had to happen to stop Thanos.
Right. Right. And I think that it is an awe-inspiring and genius play to take the character who's started off with the biggest ego and have him be the one to perform the act of self-abnegation in order to defeat Thanos. I think that, and it's a great capstone to the arc because it demonstrates finally and definitively that yes, he has grown as a person. He has become a genuinely good person from the point that he started from, and has finally learned in his last moment to put himself aside, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm wondering is, I see the brilliance of the plot. I'm really wowed by the amazing consistency of the effort, considering how many different people had hands on the project to make this arc come to fruition.
Yeah.
And, I'm happy to recognize that this is something that has never before been done in cinema and rarely in literature.
Yeah.
But the question is, why do you think it had such a gigantic emotional impact on you? What do you think about it? What does that reflect about you and how you're imbibing the story?
So we have to do a little self-analysis here. Why does Tony Stark affect me so much? Well, I think that one of the things I said to you over chat kind of encapsulates it. It's the something about the message of you can be a person who has feet of heavy clay, and we're talking really heavy clay, and yet still make your life count for something. You can still be a basket case with all kinds of problems, and yet still manage to pull something out of yourself that is noble. I think that that's something that that a lot of people need to hear. It's kind of, what am I trying to say here?
At this day and age, I think a lot of people need a hopeful message that a situation can be as bad as it can get, and what it takes is somebody loving truly.
Yeah.
And that can actually make a huge difference. And I think you're right that a flawed person, I was actually thinking about something yesterday, I'll bring that up in a sec. A flawed person being able to make the kind of difference that he makes.
Yeah.
It's important because we're all really flawed, and a lot of us feel those flaws invalidate all of our attempts to do good.
Yeah.
And, that's like a struggle we all fight, and that's why Catholicism spends so much time talking about how, yes, everyone is a sinner, everyone is flawed, and our Creator in heaven and our Lord and Savior is up there saying, yeah, I know you're really flawed, but all you have to do is ask for my help.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I was thinking actually was that amongst my many friends and followers, social media, the Catholic Writers Guild group I'm in, and the people I meet in my regular personal life, everyone who is somewhere on the autistic spectrum had a much, much bigger reaction to Tony Stark's arc than most of the other people.
Ah, okay.
I point that out because it's very interesting to me that there's something about the autistic mindset or the semi-autistic mindset that says, I think a lot of autistic people think that their view of the world is so radically different than everyone else that they can't be understood and that therefore they can't accomplish much.
Mm-hmm.
And like they can't connect with the world, so they can't fix it.
Yeah.
And I think that watching Tony Stark go through his arc may send a message that says, even if you're profoundly on a different wavelength than he very much is throughout the entire story. Everyone's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? But no one understands that he actually comes across as like not really Spectrum-y, but he comes across as a guy who just doesn't think like other people think.
Yeah. So now that you mention that, that might be part of it, since
I think very clearly you are somewhere on the spectrum, and I am also somewhere on the spectrum, although lower down.
Yeah, I think that that might be part of the key. Yeah, that as someone who has been identified at least as gifted, I've spent a lot of my life struggling with that perfectionist impulse.
Yep.
Yeah, and struggling with the I should be smart enough to be able to fix whatever X problem we're dealing with, and if a problem arises that can't be solved just through smarts, so yeah, that might be the key. But I think also I'm just a sucker for redemption arcs, and his is like the ultimate one. Like the
certainly the one that's been given the most love and attention and taken the furthest
yeah.
that I've ever seen. Like, I'm sure there are lots of stories out there that have similar grandeur that I've just not read. But
yeah.
You know, I don't want to turn.
I mentioned Babylon 5 earlier, so
yeah,
TV can do it because TV is structured to have these long, elaborate character arcs that you follow over several seasons. Accomplishing it in the cinema is definitely an unusual accomplishment. I don't think there has been a movie series that has done it like that way.
The closest I can think of are things adapted from books into a multi-movie story. I mean, there's some of that in Harry Potter. It's not as deep. There's some of that in Lord of the Rings, but that's just a 3-movie book adaptation of a book.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like, I don't want to turn comic book movies into like the next great, art masterpiece of literature. That's really not what they are.
Yeah.
I would say that I actually spent some time wrestling. I think you may have seen a couple of the posts on Facebook where I was like thinking, what makes something great in the sense that we think of like Dostoevsky as great?
Yeah.
Like, what makes something great? That staying power, and is the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe going to be thought of in those terms, or is this going to be forgotten in 20 years?
Yeah.
And I think that there are some lasting pieces that will have a permanent culture. Well, not permanent. Nothing's permanent, but a very large shadow on the culture, in the same way that Star Trek has had a gigantic shadow, but with individual people instead of with a concept.
Yeah.
And I think, not 100% sure, but I think that cultural impact will be important for the youngest generation, the Gen Z folks.
Yeah.
In a way that will lead them away from some of the mistakes of the boomers and Gen Xers.
Yeah.
I think I was going to bring this up. I wanted to talk a little bit about the messaging, at least in this first 3 waves of Marvel movies, around the concept of the greatness of the individual.
Right.
I was having a conversation with some of my, social media cohorts on the fact that this is like a giant pay-in to the notion that if everyone conforms to a giant group social structure, things go horribly wrong, and that it's the power of the individual to create and to love that changes the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have to work as a team, but they're all bringing individual strengths, and the team is not beholden to a large bureaucracy. That's for sure. And when they are, things go horribly wrong. So
yeah. When you try to submit yourself to a bureaucracy, things go horribly wrong. Yes,
it's an accidental repudiation. I don't know if they intended it, but it's an accidental. I think they intended it to mean something slightly different, but it's an accidental repudiation of the collectivist thinking of the baby boomers and Gen Xers who spent a lot of their generational development thinking that everything would be solved by the quote unquote institutions of society. And that includes like the traditional conservatives who had a lot of faith in things like the fire police and things like, you know, local and state government and in their, you know, churches and whatnot. And stopped thinking in terms of what they individually could do to make a huge difference and started thinking in terms of what they as a bloc would accomplish. And I think that that actually has led to some very deleterious effects on politics, even as the far left is doing something similar, but in the opposite direction, or not even fully the opposite direction. It's more like just directed at a different point.
Right.
Thinking as a block and thinking of people in blocks, no matter which side of the spectrum you're looking from, really kills the creative and loving potential of individual people.
True. Yeah.
And I think the MCU has managed to make a statement against that sort of thinking, which is fascinating. Even as they now dive into Phase 4 and talking about the importance of diversity and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, you might roll your eyes a little bit about some of the you know, box checking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it will still, I think, be a celebration of the greatness of individuals.
Yes, we can hope.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. Because, you know, even like as I recall, if I recall correctly, when Civil War was the plot in the comic books, a lot of people didn't like that. Because of the way it was handled in the comics. But I thought the way it was handled in the movie was actually quite well done. And I
think it was phenomenal.
Yeah, quite. That's what I want to say. I'm so much better putting my thoughts on paper than in speaking. But which is why I'm going to be blogging about the MCU for like the next couple months, probably, because
hey, better than blogging about annoying political matters.
Yeah, exactly. But what was well done about Civil War is it was not lazy writing.
No.
In the sense that you could see they took the time to develop both sides of the conflict.
Yeah, their mouthpiece was Natasha Romanoff. If you notice in the movie, she's going to both sides at first.
Yeah,
He's definitely trying to get them to see the other side. What their perspective is. So she spends a few scenes being like, you realize he thinks this because of that. And you realize he thinks this because of that.
Yeah.
Find some way to see eye to eye on this.
Yeah, exactly.
So their mouthpiece is like, yeah, these are two really big, real problems that we face in society. Real problems that we have to reckon with at all times. And sometimes they're almost irreconcilable.
Yes.
And that's a real problem that humanity faces, that constant struggle between, you know, individuals having the threat of too much ambition and larger social structures having the threat of too much corruption.
Right. Yeah. But, you know, I've said in places that, you know, when I watched Civil War, I was like, when I watched Civil War, I was intellectually Team Cap. But I was emotionally Team Iron Man. Like, and I said, and that's the sign that a movie is written well. Like,
I felt bad for everyone involved.
Yes.
And I 100% agreed with Captain America in terms of basic philosophy and moral tenets.
Yeah.
And kind of cringed at the psychological reasons that Tony Stark is making the choices he's making, in the sense that earlier Tony Stark would never have made such choices because earlier Tony Stark was too arrogant to do so.
Yeah.
So it's ironic that the less arrogant version of Tony Stark is making a horrible mistake.
Yeah.
He's less arrogant. It's like, wow, we're going through a growth phase. the ultimate at the end is let's not submit ourselves to the collective group, but let's take loving actions individually, working for a team that is overseen by other individuals who are acting in a loving manner. But it's had to go through that middle stage, I guess.
Yeah.
Needing the comfort of a structure.
Yeah, which is
that's a problem in this country. People needing structural. I think it's just a human condition thing.
It is a human condition thing, and I think that that's one more thing you can add on to how Tony Stark's arc is basically the human arc.
Yes.
Or, like I've said on the blog that out of the original gangster Avengers, he's the most vulnerable because that's the irony about his character is that he's a gigantic brain, but when it comes time to make crucial decisions, a lot of times the brain doesn't come into it. It's the heart. It's the heart that does. Even in the first movie when he's explaining to Pepper why he's suddenly become Iron Man, what he says is not, I think this is the right thing to do, but I know in my heart that it's right. Yeah. Right. And because he's at least in the crucial decisions, he's leading with his heart, but using his brain to come up with the solutions that his heart is telling him need to happen, right?
Yeah.
That's why he's prone to error, because
why all humans are.
What you were saying about cringing through Civil War about his motivations, because his motivations were 100% emotional. There was no brain involved. Like, yeah. And that's
only emotional, and he was looking for absolution.
Right.
I mean, he wanted help too, but he was looking primarily for absolution because his horrible mistake killed thousands of people.
Right.
Sokovia, they got as many people out as they could, but not everyone was getting out of there. And
right.
They blew it up.
Right.
So millions homeless and thousands dead because Tony Stark thought he could fix everything with just his brain.
Right. And the reason why he wanted to fix everything with his brain was, again, a heart issue. Yep. He was afraid.
Yep.
Right. Iron Man 3 and Ultron was basically about Tony Stark being afraid.
I'm thinking of something else too here. He had the flaw for most of his arc of thinking, if I just fix this problem, we can stop. We can go home.
Yeah.
He says, isn't that why we're doing this? So we can win the day, so we get to go home?
Yeah.
And that's actually not that's not how it works. Evil never stops.
Evil never stops until the eschaton, basically. Yeah.
Until the world is remade and in a perfect image. Evil is never going away, and we can never stop.
Yeah.
And finally, at the end, he realizes the only way to stop is to give himself over.
Right. Yeah.
And I love how they put a period on that thought by having Pepper say, "We're going to be okay. You can rest now."
You can rest now.
And it's like, wow.
Ow, my heart. Yeah. Ow. Yes, I'm not crying. I'm sweating from my eyes. Yeah. Well, the other thing about that scene, besides that, was Peter Parker, Mr. Stark, we won. Yeah. which is another.
Mr. Stark, we won.
We won. Yeah.
Like he's like, I need my mentor.
Yeah. Why is my mentor dying so soon? Yeah.
He could just. I hope that they do it right with Spider-Man, and
that
he becomes the new vulnerable one that just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
To do it on his own.
Yeah, I'm going. I do intend to go see Far From Home in the hopes that it will be an effective and proper epilogue for what just happened. Like,
they're going to have to face if there's some technical problems. They're going to have to face some issues. There's a 5-year time jump, and apparently, by miracle coincidence, all of Peter Parker's friends were among the dusted.
Yeah.
Age, woohoo! Including Aunt May, apparently.
Yeah.
But so they got the miracle 5-year time jump.
Yeah.
It was the same. But then I had a conversation with Juliet, my wife, on the topic of doesn't suddenly bringing half the Earth back create one of the worst, ecological and human catastrophes ever? Like,
yeah.
I know that half the food came back too, but not half the infrastructure.
True.
7+ billion people suddenly after only 3.5 billion, and how are we giving them all food and jobs? And the ones who got dusted, all their stuff got distributed via wills and looting and what else. When they come back, they have nothing. What now?
What now?
Like Peter Parker and May, if they both got snapped, how are they alive? Like, what are they doing for? Are they going to be in a different home?
Yeah.
Are they going to hand wave that? Like, I would like to see real consequences.
That's true, because as you see in the 5-year time jump, a lot of the houses have fallen into disrepair because people are not living in them and stuff like that. That's a good point. Yeah.
And the establishing shots you see, like in the news footage and whatnot, the picture of the Statue of Liberty surrounded by a tent city.
Right.
And like Met's, City Field is a rotted waste, and like you kind of pan over Brooklyn and it just looks wasted. Like,
right, yeah.
Half the people means only half the capacity to maintain infrastructure. It's amazing they still had power at the Avengers complex.
Yeah, true.
The outside neighborhoods were struggling.
Very true, very true.
Like, it says everything that Ant-Man stops a kid on his bike and says, "What the heck? Like, what happened here?" And the kid like rolls his eyes and keeps going.
Yeah,
it's like, where have you been, man? But also, I think, like, I don't want to talk about it because my life is shit now.
Yeah.
That's the look I got from his face. Like, they're gonna have to do something about that, because now, so you got snapped and your wife didn't, and she grieved and moved on. And you come back and she's married to somebody else.
Yeah, true.
All the displaced lives. Let's not forget, also, there should be a giant period of civil unrest and upheaval because people got snapped who were in government.
True.
And what about the Tin Pot Dictator?
Yeah.
He gets snapped, and there's like a huge power struggle to replace him, and somebody else is coming to power. Then he comes back.
Yeah.
Like, I can't pay justice to all of that, but I would like to see some hint that the world is in somewhat disarray, and that a lot of people are struggling to recover, and that not all is rosy because we won. And I would like to see it directly impact Peter Parker, aside from just having lost Iron Man, which I know they're going to cover because we've seen it in the previews. But
yeah.
I want to see, some of our friends are not here anymore, and because a few people who died in the aftermath, not from the snap, but because disaster happened.
Yeah.
Okay, Aunt May didn't age, but Uncle Ben is now 5 years older and closer to death. We haven't seen Uncle Ben yet, but I'm assuming eventually he's going to show up.
Yeah. Oh, unless they have killed him off screen already, because when we meet him in Civil War, he says, "If you have the abilities I have," and then the bad things happen. So maybe they've already killed him off screen.
Yeah, maybe they killed him. If they killed him during the 5-year time gap, that'd be cool. Then, like, he died while I was snapped. That's another grief point they could cover. But
I was thinking, based on what Peter Parker said about why he was going out and being the superhero he was in Civil War,
maybe he already died before that.
Yeah.
Man, they just kind of hand waved his whole origin story.
Right.
They decided, we're gonna say that. We're just gonna drop him in there.
Yeah. Well, I think the assumption was everyone knows who Spider-Man is, and it's not a wrong assumption. honestly, because Spider-Man is the most popular Marvel character. So, yeah.
Not only that, I think they just, they said everyone knows who Spider-Man is, and they also, I think, said, we don't really have time to cover that whole origin arc.
Yeah.
We need to set Spider-Man in our current time period, not make a whole prequel movie.
Yeah.
We're about to do too many important things.
And we need Spider-Man in the important things for certain reasons. Yeah.
And Spider-Man's going to play a pivotal role in the development of Tony Stark, and Tony Stark's movie contract is only X number of movies.
Yeah, exactly. Spider-Man's going to play a role in Tony Stark's arc, and Tony Stark is getting too old to do superhero movies. Yeah. I was talking to Mom about that. Like, I totally understand that. If you're in your 50s, you're probably thinking to
your own sense anymore.
Yeah.
I know but like he's not, he still has to do some fairly physical things, even if he's not, even if the Double's doing the really hard stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
The good news is he's in a big giant suit and hidden from view for a huge chunk of his really aggressive physical action sequences.
Yeah.
Pretty much anyone can do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it can be fully CGI'd when necessary. So.
Yeah. The only time, for the action sequences, he's generally in the suit, so you can. And the only thing you really need him for is the HUD scenes. So yeah.
On a soundstage, it's just CGI the HUD in front of him. You can just record it in front of a blue screen.
Yeah. But I was saying to Mom that, I totally get that. If I were in my 50s, I'd definitely be like, yep, I'm out. Too hard.
To play the same character for 11, I think he was in 11 movies. I gotta
count. 1, 2, 3 Avengers.
4 Avengers movies, 3 Iron Man movies, 2 Spider-Man movies, and Civil War. Well, 1 Spider-Man movie and Civil War, actually.
And Civil War. Yeah.
That's 9. Okay, 9 movies.
Yeah.
Actually, did he make any other spot appearances anywhere else? I have to think about that.
End of Incredible Hulk.
Oh yeah, right.
The credit scene. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
He was not in Captain Marvel's end credit scene.
No. But that's because he was lost in space.
Right. Just going through in my head thinking.
Yeah.
That's, I think, one of the reasons why some of Brie Larson's comments rub people the wrong way with her, I do all my own stunts because I just thought that's what actors did. It turns out that doing this job for 10 years is going to tire you out. And yeah, also it's not true that you do all your own stunts, since we've seen your stunt double in photos. Anyway. Yeah, I was watching there's a whole YouTube series called One Marvelous Scene. 101 content creators have made videos that appear under that hashtag.
Yeah.
Where they pick one scene and dissect what made it great for them. And one of them was, a guy who's like, I'm so hyped up for this, but I'm not as hyped up as I once might have been. Because, I love all the original 6, but, the most recent wave of characters are, for some reason, not grabbing me. And I'm like, well, maybe it's because none of the new characters have really complicated, horrible backstories and serious personal flaws that draw you in and make you relate to them. Because if you think about it, what's so bad about Ant-Man's life? Aside from his parents were missing, and one of them is not even dead. And actually, neither of them
spent some time in jail.
He spent a little bit of time in jail, and then he spent some time under house arrest.
Yeah.
Otherwise his life's pretty peachy. And so Ant-Man's not that exciting. Captain Marvel is like a giant blank nothing right now.
Yeah.
They better do some hard work on developing her backstory next time we see her, because someone as overpowered as her is going to be a real storytelling problem. They're going to have to come up with new reasons every time something really bad happens that that could be solved by her, for her not to be there, which is, That's going to start getting irritating.
Yeah.
But we got to find a way to weaken her. She has to be nerfed emotionally somehow.
Yeah. As far as the later wave, Spider-Man grabbed me, as you know. But I think that's because his movie was just so well written and entertaining.
Yeah, I wasn't super excited. This guy wasn't that excited about Spider-Man, but I like Spider-Man. I thought the movie was great. In fact, one of the One Marvelous Scene videos dissected the scene where he got in the car with his homecoming date and her father, who happened to be the villain.
Yeah.
Like, tense interchange where, like, Spider-Man knows that he's Spider-Man and the villain is the villain.
Yeah.
The villain knows he's the villain, but doesn't know it's Spider-Man right away. And his date doesn't know either of those things.
Right, yeah.
So, like, the date inadvertently kind of blows his cover, even though she doesn't realize that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And, like, then the guy knows that it's probably Spider-Man who's there. He's getting that suspicion, and he's been talking about, I'm going to kill that asshole, like, the whole movie.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't, like, outright, confront Spider-Man right then and there because his daughter is in the car, and
right.
Spider-Man's, like, sweating bullets, going, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
So, it's a really good. I remember watching that scene and being like, wow, this is exciting. So there was, excellent writing there, and I liked the team. I liked his, like, high school cohort team.
Yeah.
And I liked the role that Iron Man was playing in his life, which unfortunately is now, that's a different kind of role Iron Man is going to play in his life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And, has anyone, I've seen the One Marvelous Scene pop up in my Rex. Has anyone done the scene on the roof between Iron Man and Spider-Man?
The scene on the roof. Is that the one after he almost kills everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, somebody covered that one. It's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole, when Iron Man says if you nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have the suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been covered.
And my immediate thought was, and he would know that because one of his movies that was essentially the whole point of the movie. Yes, you are Iron Man without the suit.
Yep.
The suit is just the
tool.
It's the tool, and if you are too attached to the suit, then basically what you're doing is you're putting a layer between yourself and the world, and you're not dealing with whatever the issue is.
I also think Tony realized that in Iron Man 3 at the very least, he realized that the suit was a psychological crutch.
Yes.
That helped him avoid his internal struggle with PTSD.
Yes.
Remember that whole movie? He's like diving into the suit every time he has a panic attack.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and he realizes at the end, this isn't helping. It's actually making it worse.
Right.
And he doesn't want Spider-Man to go down the path of, every time there's something that's hard, I got to be Spider-Man.
Yeah. Right.
So, like, that's a really well done scene, and I think it's the kind of stuff that is underrated. There's a lot of people who think Spider-Man Homecoming was just, it was a fun movie, but I thought there were layers. I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah. Well, that kind of that brings up a whole general issue about how certain movie reviewers have approached the MCU in general. I made the mistake of reading the movie reviews in the National Review yesterday and the first thing I thought is, Jesus, why do conservative commentators have to be such spoil sports about popular culture?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty serious issue, not with conservative, but with older conservative commentators.
Yeah, yeah. I
encountered a few people like that on Facebook who are like, I miss the time when our, best cultural experiences weren't cheering at some hyped up superheroes bashing things and having explosions. And I'm like, is that what you think the Marvel movies are? Because that's not the ones I see.
Yeah.
Movies.
Okay, yeah. So, like, for my philosophy to reviewing anything, as I was saying to Mom earlier as we were driving out to Amosville, is when you review a movie, you should consider the genre it's in, consider what it's trying to accomplish, and then ask yourself, did they accomplish it?
Yes.
And not hold every kind of movie to one singular standard. There is such a thing as an objective standard of what makes a good superhero movie, but it's not going to be the same standard that like a Western would have or a rom-com would have. You know,
there are some universal things that connect all genres, but they're basic universal things, not the elements. In other words, every good movie is centered on a compelling point of view character or multiple compelling point of view characters.
right.
Every good movie has a well-structured conflict that is told in a manner that can be consumed by the audience effectively.
Uh-huh.
Every good movie is produced in a style that maximizes the visual medium in which the story is being told. That's true in every genre. But
right.
there's a difference between a noir detective story and a superhero movie.
Right.
In terms of what things the movie's trying to do. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, I only like art house movies that are trying to, like, question existence and whatnot. And I'm like,
you lead a boring life. You lead a boring life. Then
okay, you know, I liked a lot of different types of movies. And,
yeah.
you know, if that's all you care about, then you're not a movie fan. Stop pretending to be a movie fan.
Yeah. But yeah, what yeah, but yet you would say older conservatives, and I think a lot of movie reviewers in general have a prejudice against anything that is popular. And
Yes.
my philosophy on that is if something is popular, it shouldn't be dismissed out of hand. As a matter of fact, if something is popular, it deserves a second look. Sometimes things that are popular for base reasons. I was explaining to Mom that yes, Twilight is not good. It's popular. It's popular for a base reason. Basically, it satisfies kind of a primal female urge to have that one man who is obsessed with her and is focused all on her, and
yes.
that's essentially the whole point. But there are some things that are popular for reasons that are worth examination and actually are fairly deep. And I think that the MCU falls into that latter category. And the reviewers who say that, oh, it's just, superheroes fighting each other and blowing shit up, and it's not really important, it's just shallow. Like the reviewers in the National Review are saying, oh, this is a shallow popcorn movie. It's not a great cultural product. My response is basically, that is scientifically inaccurate. Like, it really is. Like,
I don't know what they think of as significant when they say something like that.
yeah.
But to me, something is significant and is art. My definition of art is something that evokes real and meaningful emotions from the people imbibing it, emotions that lead to better existence.
Right.
So, like, revulsion can be art if the revulsion is there for the purpose of leading to a higher purpose.
Yeah.
But, the whole piss Christ thing is not art.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just somebody doing something to be an asshole.
Yeah. Well,
but my point is that the MCU is evoking real, deep, meaningful, almost relationship-like feelings from millions of people.
right. And there's a reason for that. I mean, we spent the first 45 minutes talking about Tony Stark, and there's a reason for that. Like, as a character, he is written in a way that that is very human and very engaging. And the same goes for a lot of for pretty much all the other characters in the universe. I can't think of a character in the MCU that I actively dislike.
Yeah, if I had to pick one that aside from all the new, like, Captain Marvel right now annoys me. But
Captain Marvel Yeah, Captain Marvel is just meh. She's kind of a non-entity right now. We have
Yeah, I find her irksome because I think she's going to ruin storytelling. But that's as a person, it's kind of like, well, I don't really know anything about her, so you know.
Yeah.
But just about everyone else has very human, and they one of the great things about Marvel, and there's a whole bunch of these, one Marvel has seen things that's like the quiet moments. One of the great things about the Marvel films is that some of the best scenes are just them, eating shawarma or
Yeah.
fighting over whether they're worthy to wield the hammer or making jokes, cracking jokes at each other after a really bad fight.
Yeah.
Or, it's like, oh, real people
If you
acting like real people.
put the hammer in the elevator, it would still go up. I don't know. The elevator's not worthy.
If you tried to pick it up.
Yeah. Oh, FYI, talking about another major spoilery thing that happened in the movie. But this is I entitled this Endgame Spoilerama, so everyone knew walking in this is what we were gonna do. Is Cap picking up Mjolnir?
Yes, and the Brousseau brothers confirmed that Cap had the ability to pick up Mjolnir in Ultron.
Yeah, you could see it. Like when I went back to watch,
but I think you look on his face, says, "Boy, I don't want to embarrass Thor. Take away his hammer right now."
Yeah,
I'm gonna make a good scene of this and walk away because
yeah,
Thor needs the hammer right now.
yeah. Well, and if you go back and you watch that scene, which I have to confirm, it does shift a little bit.
Yes, it's some people.
Yeah, yeah. So it was teased in Ultron, which is why I said over chat that Endgame is so good it made Ultron and Iron Man 3 better movies. Like,
and Ultron, I think Ultron is taking more of a beating than it deserves in terms of the way people think about it.
True.
I think the dynamic between Tony Stark and Ultron was actually well done.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, Ultron was too jokey and sarcastic, and I'm like, it was made by Tony Stark.
True, true.
And I thought it presented a real threat specifically because it plays on all of Tony Stark's psychological failings.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that dynamic worked really well. But what didn't work was that the final battle was the Avengers versus the nameless, faceless army of meaningless robots.
Right.
And it would have been good if they had found some way to make that more personal.
Right. Well, they did have the one personal moment in killing Quicksilver.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quicksilver died, and a lot of fans were mad about that because they wanted to see that character continue. But
yeah, yeah.
But Quicksilver died, and it really hurt Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
And that was a good moment. And the scene at the end where Vision is talking to the last shell of Ultron, that's a well done scene.
Right.
So there's some personal moments there, but
yeah. Well, and okay, well, for me, Ultron deserves to exist because of the scenes at the farm. But anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
the farm stuff is fantastic. It's one of the best bridges in the entire MCU in terms of getting from it's the low point.
Yeah.
In Save the Cat.
Yeah.
They talk about 62, 63% of the way through your story. They need to hit a psychological low point.
Yeah.
And almost every movie will have the structure they talk about and will have a low point.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, one of the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And gave us some time to get to know all of the deeper. What somebody pointed out to me, and I think it's a very good point. Ultron is a movie where all the heroes think they're monsters. Every one of them has a moment where they compare themselves to a monster.
Mm.
Go back and watch it if you don't believe me. Captain America says, yeah, this isn't just about whether he's right that let's see, no, it was like the line was like, Ultron thinks that we're monsters, that we're the problem. This isn't about us, though. This is about whether he's right.
Yeah.
So you can hear the doubt in Captain America because specifically, yes, the Avengers created this disaster.
Right.
So he's wondering if the whole group is full of monsters. You've got Bruce Banner, who's obviously, he's got the monster inside.
Right.
Natasha, who has the whole scene where she says she feels like a monster because they robbed her of all of her individuality and agency,
right,
including the ability to reproduce and the ability to feel emotionally attached to anyone until very recently.
Yeah.
And you've got like Iron Man is there thinking, I created the monster and the monster reflects me. I must be a monster.
Right.
And, like everyone involved, except maybe Hawkeye, has a moment where they talk about how much of a monster they feel like.
Yeah.
Even Fury shows up.
Right. Right. And yes. What am I trying to say? Well, Ultron reveals things like Steve thinking that maybe he can't live without conflict.
Yes.
Yeah.
Steve thinks maybe he can't live without conflict, and when they all get whammied by Scarlet Witch was the one who did it. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all get whammied by Scarlet Witch playing mind games with them.
Yeah.
Tony has the vision where everyone dies because some horrible threat from the outside kills them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tony, not Tony, yeah, Steve has the vision where he can go back to the past.
Yeah.
And that's where he should go, and that he doesn't belong here. So in that sense, he's not just like struggling to fit in, but he's a man who completely without a purpose.
Yeah.
In his head. My purpose was back there. I don't belong here.
Yeah.
So yeah, he wonders, can I live without conflict? I think that's a proxy also for can I live without the conflict that bore, my character to develop in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
Like he's still fighting World War II.
Right. Right.
That's why I say there's no bad movie so far in the MCU, not even Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Because all of them leave breadcrumbs that get activated later.
Right. Right. Yeah. I recently watched the previous 21 in preparation for Endgame, and thought to myself that there are movies that are weaker than others, but there was never one that I said, this is terrible, I hate this movie. Like there's a certain consistency in the quality that is all, as you were saying, this was the work of many different writers and directors working together, and to have that many hands on the cook pot and still get something that is relatively consistent throughout is kind of a miracle.
Yeah, a lot of the credit goes to Kevin Feige, who is sort of the top dog in terms of strategic planning.
Yeah.
Like he's the guy who invented like the Iron Man character that we would see on the screen. The original comic book Iron Man wasn't quite this self-indulgent and psychologically messed up at first.
Yeah, yeah.
But Kevin Feige said, yeah, well, the character is not that popular in the comics yet.
Yeah.
But this is the guy to start with because this is the most human, and we're going to play that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's going to be the emotional core. He and Captain America, the two of them.
Right. The two of them and their relationship. Like,
yeah, how they interplay with each other, specifically because they're polar opposites in their way of viewing the world.
Right.
But so I think give Kevin Feige credit for not only creating the initial impetus for the entire MCU to date, but also for sort of requiring that, all hands on deck meet general expectations for they call it the big board.
Right.
Their team has a big board with all the story elements kind of laid out and the various characters they plan to introduce and when they plan to introduce them. And
yeah,
it's like the biggest storyboard ever. Like,
yeah. I bet
it is. A room filled with a big board. It's like, many feet wide and several feet tall and extends. It's like the description I got was pretty impressive. The point, though, is they got it all planned out many, many movies in advance. That wasn't true when they did Iron Man, but it became true after Iron Man 2. They said, oh, we got a thing now.
Yeah. So where can we take this? Yeah.
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 Okay, now we've proven we can do a good character that people want to come and see, and our revenues for the second movie are twice as high as our revenues from the first movie. So the studio's greenlit 5 more movies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And even though the critical response to 2 wasn't quite as good as 1, people still kind of liked it. You like it.
I still remember Iron Man 2 being fun to watch, and I wanted to see the next one. So,
Yeah. I actually found our old review of that one.
Did we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did we say? I forget.
We said we basically said this is fun, but it also had some emotional depth to it. I said it was me writing the review, and I said, just FYI, I choked up a little bit with the video of his dad. Like,
oh yeah, that's one of the better moments in the entire Iron Man, the Iron Man trilogy.
Yeah.
As he's like, his dad scolds him and sends him away. Get him to bed, rah! And
yeah.
My greatest gift to the world, the thing I'm most proud of is you. It's like,
yeah.
Well, why the fuck didn't you tell me that, Dad?
Oh yeah, speaking of Dad, how much did you love when he met Dad in the past?
Oh, I thought that. But there's a lot of people complaining that the whole going to the past for the time heist thing took too long, and they were a little bit too self-indulgent, going back to the old movies and stuff. And I could not disagree more.
Yeah. Oh, I completely disagree. Actually, I think that I don't think that the meeting his dad before he's born scene is a wasted moment, because I think talking to his dad and his dad saying, he's not even born yet and I would do anything for him. Yeah, might have given him that extra push to be willing to do what he does at the end, so
for
that
his daughter.
So he can leave the world for his daughter. Yeah. So
every individual piece of that whole long sequence, the various people going to the past, serves a piece of the story that comes out in the final battle. Every one of them.
Yeah.
You go back with Nebula and hell, who'd she go back with? I'm blanking. Nebula went back with. Come on. Was it Banner? No, it wasn't Banner. And no, it was it Quill? No, it wasn't Quill. Shit, why am I blanking on this?
I know, I'm blanking on it too.
Ant-Man went with the Avengers to get the thing. It's not Ant-Man.
What
wise about? No, you can't just walk in and take the Power Stone, because there's going to be booby traps. And then she just walks in and takes the Power Stone. I'm trying to remember who it was.
Yeah.
Who was it? Iron Man, Cap.
Iron Man, Cap. Yeah.
Iron Man, Cap, and Hulk and Ant-Man went to New York City.
Yeah.
Natasha and Hawkeye went to Vormir.
Right.
We'll
talk about
Thor and Rocket went to
Asgard, yeah.
And Nebula and who went to the Guardians 1 movie places. Who was it? This is annoying. Why can't I remember?
Anyway, whoever it was that went with her.
The two of them. I brought this up because, like, in each chunk, something really important happens for the characters involved.
Right.
Nebula basically demonstrates the positive way forward for the Gamora we get in the future.
Right.
And also makes a momentous decision to kill her past self, which is basically the character equivalent of rejecting everything she was, which is great.
Which is yeah.
So that's a key moment.
Yeah.
And you know, in New York City, each individual piece of that was important. Banner went for the exposition. That was the only, not really character thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But we needed the exposition about why the stones would, break reality and cause all kinds of chaos if we didn't, if they were taken permanently out of other realms.
Right.
And how other time travel worked.
Right.
Hulk was along for the ride to a certain extent, but he also got a little meta-analysis on his old self.
Yeah.
And when he came back from that, I think he was even better place. Up until the point where he realized that Natasha died.
Right.
I think he was even more confident in that his decision was the right one, because later on he was, empowered to pick up the gauntlet and use it.
Right.
And Iron Man goes back to see his dad and has a very meaningful interchange with his dad. And like basically all the individual people have a huge character moment. We were reminded that Natasha and Hawkeye had a very important reason for being as close as they were.
Right.
And, we go back through that relationship, and they both try to sacrifice themselves for the other. And that's,
that is emotionally powerful and can't be taken out of the movie. So it's not wasted.
Yeah, I'm just saying I can't think of a sequence that was totally wasted. Some people think that when people who don't like what they did with Thor, think that the exchanges on Asgard were like overwritten and not very good and whatnot. The more I think about it, the more I actually like what they did with Thor better than I originally did.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from, and I think it had to be Rocket who was the one who delivered the slap and like shook him out of it as much as possible. It had to be Rocket that came with him, because Rocket has experience in the area that Thor is dealing with now.
Yeah, yeah.
But you could see that, like, they made fun of him, but I think that was a defense and coping mechanism, because I think they were all deeply worried.
Yeah, yeah.
The looks on their faces.
Yeah.
Even Tony has a tendency to be acerbic and, smart assy, even when in a big
which is part of what makes
Tony's like move aside Lebowski and shakes his head like, it's not like he's dismissing him. He's thinking, oh, like, this is horrible. Look at this,
Yeah.
So, I don't feel like it was dismissing the issue. In fact, I think when I watched it again the second time, I enjoyed the scene with him and his mother immensely.
Yeah.
So even that wasn't wasted space.
Right.
So I'm having a hard time figuring out at what point in the time heist people thought was overdone, because I didn't see it.
Yeah.
All that is a long, complicated way of saying I really enjoyed Tony Stark's conversation with his father previously.
Yeah.
Because specifically, I think that something like that was necessary, because they needed to bookend the whole daddy issues thing.
Yeah. I mean, actually, when you watch all of Endgame, you like the way that they structured it, they were kind of telegraphing, he's gonna die, because they were resolving
all his pieces
he had through his arc. Like,
you had to break him of any illusion that he could technologically solve anything.
Yeah.
Done. Technology won't solve this problem.
Right.
Then you had to build him up and give him the thing that he'd never embraced before.
Right.
Raised the family. He's got the love of his life. He's he's happy.
Ish. Yeah.
He's very sad about Peter Parker. You can tell that still really bothers him.
Yeah.
But he's loving his family. And then you have to take him several key steps further forward. He's happy with his family, but afraid to risk anything for fear of losing that family.
Right.
As opposed to recognizing that life is risk, and that people who lead their families well take risks for the benefit of their family. And a whole sequence of events in the movie kind of hammer that home.
Right. Yeah, but he kisses and makes up with Steve.
Yeah.
When I saw the movie ended, I was like, oh, thank God they made up. That was one of the things that that devastated me so much about Civil War. But when I got to the end of Civil War, I'm like, my heart hurts so much. Like,
they can't not be friends. And yeah, actually, at first when I watched Civil War, I came out of the theaters. My emotional reaction was, I don't like it. I don't like what it did to the group.
yeah,
I don't like it. They should be together.
yeah.
You know, on reviewing, I'm like, this is really well done. Wow.
Yeah.
It still like bums me out though.
It seriously bums me out. I said on the blog, like, that final fight between
he has to break the arc reactor.
we have to break him because he won't stop. Yeah, ow, my heart hurts so much with that. Yeah, so thank God they kissed and made up. So they resolved that. And then they resolved the daddy issues thing. So I was like, yep, they are telegraphing he's gonna die because they're solving all the problems.
I actually made a comment about that in one of the posts. It wasn't. I don't think it was one of the One Marvelous Scene ones, but there's a lot of people talking about it, obviously. Yeah. And one of the few videos I saw, someone was commenting that you know, fans have an expectation that the good guys are safe until such time as they feel all their problems and major story arcs are completed.
Right.
Then there's a general expectation that now that it's okay to kill them, they probably will.
Yeah.
By saying, "Oh no, I know he's gonna die now."
If they're doing that, he's dead. Ah. Although, as you know, I kind of had a sense that that was going to happen walking in because I saw the movie late. I was not one of those people who walked in opening weekend. Yeah, I'm here. I'm going to see this movie because I had to catch up. Yeah. And so all my kids already knew. All my kids at work already knew what happened. So, you know, one Monday night before I went to see the movie that Tuesday, I was, you know, the kids are like, oh yeah, Endgame, et cetera, and so forth. And I'm like, I haven't seen it yet. And they're like, they immediately shut up because don't spoil the Endgame. And then,
and what's amazing is that even kids now respect that cultural rule. Like that didn't used to be that big of a deal, but now it's like, no. Spoiling someone of a major cultural event is one of the greatest social sins you could possibly commit in this world. And even kids who are smartasses and like to piss people off sometimes, not spoil Endgame.
Yeah.
That is anyway. Continue.
Yeah, but yeah. So I was saying, and I just happened to say offhand, yeah, I've been watching I've been catching up on the parts of the MCU that I missed because I stopped going to movies for a while. And I would have to say that Iron Man is my favorite character. And one of the kids got this look on his face, and I said, oh God, he's gonna die, isn't he? So I had a suspicion, like the kid was like, oh, I know something, but I can't tell you. I can't spoil the end game, but
I'm gonna spoil it. Not gonna spoil it. Even I would have trouble with that. Somebody, after I'd seen it, somebody's like, my favorite character is Iron Man. I'd probably be like, oh, really? Interesting. Eyebrow raised.
Eyebrow raised. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the kids are respecting the hashtag don't spoil the end game, but the problem is they have less control over their facial features. So say something and they go, yeah. I'm like, oh. I think I texted you that night. I'm like, okay, I'm calling it now. Iron Man dies, right? And you're like, don't spoil the end game.
I said hashtag don't spoil the end game, all right?
Yeah.
Just go see it tomorrow, like you said.
Yeah.
You gotta see this movie.
You gotta see it now.
Yeah, and I forget who it was. I think it was Nando V Movies, one of the YouTube channels I watched. The guy who actually organized the whole.
One Marvelous Scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who was commenting in another video about how it seems like Hollywood now has a huge bias against the movies that are popular when it comes time to do Oscars.
Yeah.
Like you look back at the Oscars in the 60s and 70s and whatnot, and it's always the ones, even the 90s, it's always the ones everyone went to see.
Yeah.
Now here in the 2010s, it's like the Oscar goes to a movie no one saw.
Yeah.
And then people go and see it after because they frequently will replay a lot of the Oscar movies in the weeks thereafter. This movie won an Oscar. I should probably see why. You know, people go and see it on the rerun, and then it's like, yeah, but I still like blah 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 better.
Yeah.
It's more my speed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about just because something is popular doesn't mean it's bad. Yeah.
I had an argument about that regarding music with some of the people in my when I was working for the Yankees, some of the interns in the bullpen.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were like, yeah, so and so is not good. So they're just producing mass produced crap, and everybody just likes it because it sounds like everything they heard before. And I'm like, you know, in my world, if people like your music, that means you did something right.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, like I said before, when something is popular, it deserves a second look because maybe they are doing something that is validly artistic.
Yes. Sometimes it is just because it's simple and has a great bass beat.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to dance to. Sometimes the lyrics are meaning more than people realize, or there's something unique about the transitions in the song. The bridge is, you know, super catchy or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, and when it comes to films and books and whatnot, sometimes the story touches a cultural nerve that needs touching.
Yeah.
You know, we all got super into Lord of the Rings when the Lord of the Rings movies came out because they were really, really, really well made, but also because that story was desperately needed at the time it was released.
Right.
Because that was around 9/11.
Right.
And everybody wanted to go escape into something where the heroes could stand up against impossibly horrible odds in a terrible world and, you know, do amazing things. And, you know, like that's an artistically valid reason to have a story.
Right. It's it's one of the primal stories, and it's primal for a reason, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that what the MCU accomplished with many of its characters are various different versions of primal stories. Like Tony Stark is a primal story. It's a story of the man who was humbled and then redeemed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are like 4 different major, somebody said, you know, there are different people with different takes. There are 4 or 9 or 27 or however many you want to identify different major hero's journey type story arcs.
Yeah.
You know, in the 4 one, you know, the 4-story model, Tony Stark's is the classic example of the destroyed and remade version of that. And then there's the, you know, the out of nothing into something is more like Captain America.
Yeah.
Or Spider-Man in the future. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the guy comes out of nowhere, has no, you know, is not hero worthy at all, and then proves he is hero worthy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's Frodo, basically. You know.
Yeah. Out of nothing, something. Well, Cap though wasn't completely nothing before the serum though, because
well, no, the serum worked on him because of his character and whatnot. I'm not saying, but like Frodo's not nothing before he carries the ring to Mordor either.
True.
It's when they say nothing, they just mean unknown, you know, insignificant until such point as they became significant.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed and the overwhelming underdog.
Right.
And I was like, I forget what the other two tropes were in the 4, but you know, there's like passing the torch was one.
Yeah.
The classic mentor-mentee thing.
Yeah.
That's Luke Skywalker.
Right. Or Tony Stark and Peter Parker.
Let's say Peter Parker is going to be the passing the torch example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
As would Falcon be.
Right. Yeah, actually, yeah. Uh-huh.
And then the other one I think is the anti-hero.
True, yeah.
Not broken and remade, but already broken and changed.
Right.
Straight redemption. But see, like the stories, the reason why there are only a few stories is because there are only a few stories that we need.
Mm-hmm.
It's the things we have to, the stories we have to tell to survive a world that seems hell-bent on killing us at every turn.
Right.
And making us miserable while it does it. Anywho, I don't know how long you intended this to be, but I got to get ready for a shift soon, so perhaps we can end it there.
Yeah, that does seem like a good place to end.
90 minutes, that's about right.
Yeah, that's about right. All right, well, thank you for taking time out of your day to join me in this conversation. And
oh, it was fun.
Hopefully those of you who are listening to this later will like some of the commentary. And I bid you farewell and good evening.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.